about tips for setting boundaries in your relationship. And I'm going to discuss 5 tips with you. I think that this is an important topic. People are always wanting to know how they set boundaries. My therapist says that I have amazing boundaries. Which I think is funny. But I think that boundaries is really important for a lot of people because it allows them to really just kind of check themselves mentally and emotionally when it comes to dealing with other people. And people are always wanting to talk about boundaries because it is a difficult thing for them to do. And there are different settings in which you need to set your boundaries. So you might need to set boundaries in your relationship. You might need to set boundaries, meaning your personal relationships, your relationship with your significant other, or your relationship with your family, or relationship with your kids, or relationship with your friends. You might need to set boundaries in your workplace. You might need to set boundaries in areas where you are volunteering. So there's all of these different places in our lives in which we need to set boundaries, and our approach to them is very different. So what else is different is that I'm in my office space today versus being outside where I was for the last broadcast. And I attempted it. The video is really funny if you want to go watch the video, where there was a lot of wildlife happening around me and I actually couldn't deal with it. So today, although it's a pretty day, I decided I'm going to come inside my house and I'm not going to deal with all of the outside elements, as nice as it is outside today. So before we get started into setting boundaries, we need to ask ourselves a fundamental question, which is, why are boundaries important? And boundaries are important because they set clear lines between your wants and your needs, your likes and your dislikes, and they actually keep you safe. They keep you sane, they help keep you happy, and they are one of the many ways in which we are establishing healthy mental and emotional self-care habits. Boundaries are all about communication. All about communication. So if you find that being an open and honest person with people is a challenge for you, then you might find that communicating your wants and needs is also going to be a challenge. And if it is a challenge, well, what is the solution? Or if it is a challenge for you to set boundaries, what is the solution? And I always like to say that you want to approach the relationship that you're setting, that the person that you're setting those boundaries with, from a place of love and a place of respect. And you have to ensure that that's mutual, that love and that respect are both mutual. Okay, that's key, because if the love and respect is not mutual, then you probably need to reassess whether having a relationship with that person is even worth it. Right? So if a person doesn't have true love for you, or they don't have respect for you, then they are going to disregard any of the boundaries that you set. So you need to be clear on how that other person views you and your relationship. Sometimes it's easier to talk to people via technology. Right? So this is one of the first tips. So if you find that it's hard for you to speak the words that are going to set the boundaries for you, you might decide, hey, it's easier for me to maybe text that person, or maybe it's easier for me to talk to them on the phone, or maybe it's easier for me to email them all of the thoughts that I'm having and the boundaries that I need to set. And honestly, it might not feel as confrontational for you. I know that some of us can speak what we need to speak. It's on our minds much easier than others. So that's when you decide to use a tool to help you get those thoughts out of your head. This is what I will say about the texting and the email. Caution on that a little bit, because sometimes things get lost in translation. So you need to be mindful. People misinterpret what you write via email and via text sometimes. So you have to manage how you approach communicating your needs through text and email. Tip number 2, you might decide that you have to go analog and write a letter to the person expressing where you need to set some boundaries. I know that, for those of you who are younger, who are like in your 20s, you might not have had the experience of writing letters to your significant other, especially if you had like a long distance relationship, because you could just get on FaceTime, or you could, you have all this technology. But some of us that are a little bit older, us Generation X people and a little bit older, when you had a relationship or long distance relationship, you really got to know the person a lot of times by on the phone or writing letters to them. Remember getting letters? I used to love getting letters. But writing letters is a great way to express who you are, how you're feeling, what you need, without the interruption, without feeling like you're being confrontational. So you might decide to just write that person a letter. Sometimes you might need to write a letter to yourself if you need to set boundaries with yourself, but definitely consider writing them a letter. That way you can organize your thoughts, organize everything that you want to talk about in a very clear way. And if something doesn't work for you, or you feel like when you read it back, it sounds a certain way, you can just scratch it out. They will never have known that you wrote that. Okay. Number 3, enjoy a laid back activity with each other before you start having a conversation about boundaries. So when you enjoy an activity, like maybe you go walking with each other, or maybe you do something that's more intimate with a person. Once you guys are both relaxed, then, and your guards are down, then it makes it a little easier to bring up things that have been on your mind, or things that you need to discuss with them in terms of your boundaries. It is a very good tactic. Number four, don't call it boundaries. There's something about that word, right? Saying I need to set some boundaries can sometimes feel confrontational in and of itself. So you might need to change the language a little bit. You might need to say something like agreement, or you might need to use a word like understanding or clarity. I want to get an understanding between us. So I want to get a little bit of clarity in terms of our relationship, or the things that I need or the things that I don't need in our relationship. So just tweaking that word makes it sound a lot different to the other person. Number 5, always start with a compliment if you need to. I'm not going to say always start with a compliment, because not everyone needs to have a compliment from you, in terms of the conversation. But in some situations, it can make it easier to have that conversation where you start with a compliment and you say something like, I like this about you. I like when you do this, or I love when you do this. So you're telling them what you like or love about what they're doing, right, in terms of the relationship with you, before you come through with the boundary setting language and say, however, I don't need that, or I don't want that, or I need to set a boundary on this, or I need to have an understanding with you about this. If you come with that love first, then the person can understand that, your intention is an intention not to be mean, not to be nasty, but it is coming from a place of love first. And then we're going to have this conversation. So it feels much better for the other person. It feels much better for you in terms of your emotions. And then you just take all of the emotions out of it and just keep things simple. Keep it like a business meeting. Make it plain, right? If you send out a certain type of energy, expect that you might get that energy back. So always keep that in your mind when you're having these conversations about setting boundaries with people. If all else fails, get an intermediary to work on your behalf. And that can be a counselor, that can be a loved one, that can be a friend, whatever it is, to help you get those boundaries across to that individual. You're going to find that having clear lines of communication is going to make you a happier person, happier relationship that's mutually beneficial to both of you. The hardest part with setting boundaries is communicating openly and clearly. Once you get that squared away, boundary setting is not such a hassle. So I hope that served you today. I would love to hear your opinion about setting boundaries. And if you need to get more information about how we can work together to just give you a better sense of what self-care looks like for you and what boundary setting can look like for you, make sure that you reach out to me. I have a course that's open that is a self-care course, and it's bit.ly/self-success circle. bit.ly/self-care success circle. And that is actually more like a training and less of a course, where we go through boundary setting. We go through what self-care looks like for you. We go through your business. We go through a lot of things. But if you go through that link, you can get more information of what that self-care success circle looks like and everything that's involved in it. I'm super excited about it, and I can't wait to answer your questions and have you join me inside that circle. Don't be afraid of setting boundaries. We all need them for our mental and our emotional self-care. I'll see you guys soon.